Well, listen, let's keep it real. That is probably the biggest problem. Well, not even, yeah, it was probably the biggest problem in Hollywood right now. The fact that they cannot garner a younger audience.
Wow.
What's up, everybody? My name is MichaelStephenson. Welcome to my YouTube channel. You are currently watching my art/entertainment industry series in which I talk about the art/entertainment industry with a focus specifically on TV and film, a little bit of publishing, a little bit of music also sprinkled in there. And I talk about why it seems so different now than it has in the past. And what we can potentially do to fix that kind of stuff. So I ask that if this is your first time on my channel, I ask that you please go back and watch some of my previous videos. I'm trying to do these videos in a sequential order so that I can build up a particular language/lingo here on the channel so that you would know what I was talking about when I said something like the Avatar era, or that this was the Lost effect, or this was the Rocky Horror Picture Syndrome, etc., etc. You would just know exactly what it was that I was talking about, and I wouldn't have to explain myself in great detail. So again, please go back and watch those videos. So tonight, again, continuing in my Marvel themed videos for Marvel month, this will probably go maybe even into May. I wanted to talk about one of the things that has been very much so a lightning rod of discussion on these here internets concerning the current MCU. And that has to be the topic of youth, or the skew of younger superheroes that the MCU is currently going with. So as you can see, the title MCYouth, which I'll be honest with you, I like that much better than the MCU thing. Number one, this is actually not a derogatory or denigrative idea that I have. A lot of people have called out the MCU as of late, post Endgame, for going incredibly young with a great majority of their characters. You have Miss Marvel. She's supposed to be a teenager. You have the new Hawkeye played by y'all, I just forgot her name. I just had her name and I forgot it. Now I can only remember Shailene Woodley's name. Oh God. Anyways, she, dang it, what is her name? She was the star of that movie Edge of 17. She's supposed to be like a young 20-something-year-old Hawkeye. You of course have Florence Pugh. I think you actually pronounced the G in it. Anyways, I always thought it was Florence Pugh, but you have her as the new Black Widow. She's a younger Black Widow, a young 20-something. She's supposed to be a young 20-something. You have, God, who else? You have, well, I guess she's supposed to be Iron Lad, the Riri Williams that was featured in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. She's sort of taking over the throne of Iron Man, sort of, kind of. You have a lot of these younger characters now that are coming into the MCU. And the reason why I was actually inspired to make this particular video is because in passing I saw, and I don't really watch him anymore. And it's not because like I disagree with something that he said or anything like that. It's just that I don't have the time, unfortunately. But I used to watch John Campea like all the time. And it was funny too because I would watch him, but I never knew his name. And so my mom, we kind of got into a bit of an argument because she was like, "Oh, who's that dude that you always listen to every day?" Because I used to watch AMC Movie Talk. That was back in the day. Actually, I used to watch just Movie Talk before AMC bought it or sponsored it. And it eventually turned into Collider Talk, I think it is, or I don't know what it is now. I think it is Collider Talk. But I used to watch him on there, and I didn't know his name. So I finally figured out his name, and as soon as I learned his name, because I would kind of just ignore I kind of just ignore the first couple of opening minutes, which is, I kind of expect for y'all to be ignoring that too, to be honest with you, on my videos, which is why I'm not going to change the beginning. But in any case, by the time I found out his name, I stopped watching him. But recently I saw a video of his in which I believe he was talking about Doom Part 2, and he mentioned something about how he thinks that he sees that the MCU is going younger, and he thinks that that's a problem. And I wholeheartedly disagree. I think that it is actually a benefit. So let's get into it. Let's figure this out. Let's open this up, and hopefully this is actually a shorter video. I know I say that in pretty much every video. This time I mean it. Hopefully this is a much shorter video than my normal videos. So as I said, we have not only a lot of new characters, but we have a lot of younger characters that seem to be in some ways taking over for the older characters that were already established, right? We had an older Black Widow and Scarlet. She kind of she was close to the same age that Florence is now when she started playing Black Widow back in 2010. But new Black Widow, much younger, 20-something. New Hawkeye, although we may still see the older Jeremy Renner Hawkeye as well. Miss Marvel. We have all these younger characters that are taking over, and they're sort of representative of the teenage brand or set. Yes, most of the actors are definitely in their 20s, but even though they are in their 20s, they are still very much so representing an age range. Seemingly, it looks from about 16 to maybe about 22, 23-ish, somewhere in there. They look young. They're supposed to be young, and I think it's good because of a few reasons. So first off, yes, I get it, and I understand that a lot of Marvel's average fans are male, and well, the fandom, as far as the age range, it runs the gamut, right? So there are plenty of people who are middle-aged men, as well as there are plenty of people who are supposed to be younger men who like these comic books. But there's a problem in Hollywood overall that I think is one of the things that Marvel is trying to address. So first off, let's say this. Disney, regardless of how you feel about Disney, regardless of, whether you are one of those people who is counting yourself as a far righter, who is talking about wokeness and stuff all the time, blah, 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 yada, 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 or you just don't like what Disney has done to Marvel, even though they've owned Marvel for the majority of the movies that Marvel has made. And yes, that's during Infinity War, during Endgame, during some of the best Marvel movies. But you don't like what they're doing now. For the most part, Disney is a genius company, okay? One of the things, and as I said in some of my other videos, I consider myself to be part of all three of the groups that I am talking about here. I'm an artist / entertainer. I'm a writer, want to be an actor, director, producer. Obviously, I'm a consumer, but then I also feel like I'm part of the business. I'm a businessman as well. To be a good business person, one needs to be able to, in some ways, spot trends and either utilize those trends, exploit them in some way, or create trends where there aren't any. As a business person, I myself have seen this. And so if I've seen this, then I know that other people within the industry have seen it. And this is why I think that the MCU going a little younger is actually good. That is that if you look around currently at the marketplace overall, the wide marketplace overall in Hollywood, there really isn't a whole lot of stuff geared towards specifically teenagers. I know that sounds kind of crazy. It seems like ridiculous on its face, but this is, and this is in some ways one of the things that I was kind of getting at or hinting at in my video on who is this for, where I was talking about audience market capture, specifically about various age demographics and things. When I look around, there's almost no TV shows, and there are very few movies, if any, really, that actually appeal to or are supposed to be made specifically for a teenage demographic. And when I say teenage demographic, I'm talking about the most coveted demo of between 14 or 15 up to somewhere around 23, 24-ish. Like, there's almost nothing for them out there. I think routinely about the shows and the films that came out in the 80s and 90s and who they were oftentimes made for. Yes, you even had shows. Now, granted, I wasn't around in the 80s, okay? I'm not that old. I'm a millennial, so I'm not that old. But even in the 80s and 90s, you look back on those films, you routinely had films that were specifically made for teenagers. They knew their audience and they knew it well. And they wanted teens to come out and to enjoy these movies. Again, the 80s was the first decade in which we saw the PG-13 rating, to where they wanted, and I talk a little bit about this in my cycle video as it concerns Gen Xers. They wanted for Gen Xers to be able to attend movies that were not super adult, but also not kiddie stuff either, that they could absolutely love and enjoy and feel a certain level of independence and feel like they were actually being talked to and catered to in a way. In the 90s, you kind of had the same thing. Now, yes, you had a mixture of shows that were made for a family, for family viewing, but that were also very much so geared toward catering to teen audiences. Whether it was Family Matters, which, yes, it was a family show, but the majority of the characters that you followed on there and that you really invested in were teenagers, or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, in which, again, Will Smith, he was, and Alfonso Ribeiro, and of course Tatiana Ali, all of them were supposed to be teenagers, right? Going through the ups and downs of teenagedom, even though, yes, it was a family drama. It focused in on the family. It was really about the teens, right? You had shows like that, or whether it was other shows like Party of Five or Beverly Hills 90210. You had shows that were not only primetime shows, but shows that showed oftentimes Gen Xers and sometimes millennials as the decade wore on, that appealed to teenagers specifically. It showed their lives. It showed what they were going through, the struggles and triumphs that they were doing, the things that were happening to them, how they were struggling to ultimately become adults, etc., etc. A strange thing happened, and this again is one of the things that I've covered in some of my other videos, is that somewhere around the turn of the century, things started to be, or I guess niches or niches of a lot of different things started to kind of fade away. So I've already talked about like the actor categorizations. They started to fade away to where now it doesn't feel like you can point at any one actor and say, oh yeah, that actor is a insert genre type of person, right? For older actors like a Jason Statham or a Tom Cruise, you can point to them and say, oh yeah, he's an action actor. He acts in action movies. But for millennials and younger, you kind of point to them and say, oh, that person is an actor, and they either are good or bad. And I just read something recently talking about how Natalie Portman came out and she said, yeah, there aren't really stars anymore. And I guess she thought that it was a good thing, because that meant that so y'all will never know the frustration that I have with my current technology. So apparently the video cut off the last minute again. So what I was basically saying here is that Natalie Portman said that she thought that it was a good thing that there are no longer stars, because that means that there are no longer star categorizations, or people won't be pigeonholed into a specific kind of role or genre. My thing is that I think in the same way that I always bring up that Ellen Pompeo story in which she says that she hated that iconic line on Grey's Anatomy of choose me, love me, etc., because she thought it was too beggy. I think that here, sometimes the actors and actresses are wrong, and they don't really know, because they are not fully dialed into the fandom or to the business side of what they're doing. For me, I think that this is actually a bad thing, because of the fact that, yes, we have good and we even have some great actors here and there, but people, the general public likes to have people that they feel like they can rely on, to where if they hear this person's name, then boom, they know automatically that that person is going to give them a good movie in this particular genre or in that particular kind of thing, etc., etc. They just automatically know, to where sometimes we do have this sort of doubt on, can this person really play this kind of role, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So in that same sort of instance, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of, even though it does feel like we do have a lot of niches right now that are, I guess, going mainstream in some ways, it doesn't feel like we actually have things that are geared toward one specific demo. It just feels like everything that is coming out right now is for everybody, or it tries to be for the broadest audience that it can be for. And that essentially is, weirdly enough, excluding teenagers in as well as new adults in some way, because they don't feel like anything is being made for them. So then I go on to talk about even various TV shows that are supposedly made for
teenagers. But like, are they though?
If you have seen videos on my channel, you would know that I picked Dune Part 1 as the epitome or as a perfect example for almost everything wrong currently with Hollywood. Even though I know a lot of people seem to like that, it's not that good. Similarly, the show which shall not be named, and I don't really want to name the show, but you could probably figure it out from all the context clues and whatnot. I don't want to name the show because, I have many reasons, let's just say. But the show which shall not be named is pretty much the TV version of that. It is the epitome of almost everything wrong with Hollywood, whether it is Nepo baby thing that you don't like or poor structure of stuff. It falls victim to the Avatar era. It looks good, but there's so much emptiness there, etc., etc. It's full of cliches, all that stuff. Even that show, which is starring 20-something actors that are playing teenagers, which is something that we've always done, but you can tell that the show in and of itself does not actually seem to appeal to teenagers. Like it almost even watches in some sense. It watches, like when you watch it, it watches like a show that is geared toward millennials, that is made for millennials or the older demographic. And you look online and it's like, yeah, it's kind of older people who are talking about the show. They are the ones who are watching it. It's not like, number one, it doesn't even have 3 million viewers per episode. And the first season, it didn't even have 500,000. It barely had 500,000 viewers per episode. But everybody, the network that has it came out and said, oh, it's a hit. It's a big hit. It feels very much so like Hollywood knows that they have a huge problem and they are panicking. They cannot, for whatever reason, seem to court or to figure out the younger demographic. They just can't. The shows that they make supposedly for teenagers are not actually for teenagers, or teenagers don't like them, or it's a very hard predicament for them right now. Because even when you look at stuff like Stranger Things, it's like, is that really for teenagers, or is it full of so much nostalgia that it's really for a older demographic, potentially Gen Xers? And I've already made the video. I still have yet to release it though, but I've made the video saying that Gen Xers are kind of ruining entertainment right now. And of course it's a bit of millennials too, but it's mostly Gen Xers because everything is made really for them and with them in mind. When you're looking at it, there are so few TV shows and films that are actually made just for teenagers that it's just like there's a whole market that is not being catered to in almost any way, shape, or form. Even worse, every time they do actually make something for teenagers, which is like once in a blue moon, and let me be very clear, I don't really count Netflix as anything, to be honest with you. Like, yeah, I know Netflix exists. Yes, they are putting out some stuff that's for teenagers and everything, but the way that y'all talk about Netflix so bad that it's just like, y'all act like they're putting out just made for TV movies. So I don't count Netflix as being a positive here, unfortunately. So Netflix could be doing some great stuff. I don't know. I don't have them. Maybe I'll get them this year, but just to see the new Beverly Hills Cop. But outside of that, But when you look at it across the board, even when Hollywood does try to release something that is for teenagers, I feel like the last great or even good movie that was specifically for teenagers was probably either the first Divergent or The Fault in Our Stars, or Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. Like, you have to go back, weirdly enough. I think all of those were over a decade ago. And yes, if you are older, you're probably thinking like, oh, Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, I feel like that was just a few years ago. Like, no, homie, no. Like, number one, you probably are old enough to have grown up when the use of the term homie was like everywhere. it was kind of everywhere. You are just, time is moving at a rate that you probably are not fully grasping. Okay, these things came out years ago. Edge of 17, even that was pre-pandemic. That had to be at least like 2018 or something. Like, that was 6 years ago. That was 6 years ago at least. I feel kind of like it's even older than that. I feel like it was like 2017 or something. You have to go back years, and even then, it'll be only like 1 or 2 films. That movie 8th Grade, it was an okay movie, and I could see being a teenager and thinking like, oh yeah, this is I really kind of love this movie. But outside of that, there's like one every so often to where you look back in the 1980s and it's like they were having teenage stuff all the time. It seemed like they had, I mean, they had so many teenage movies that were made for teenagers that specifically catered to teenagers, that they literally had almost all of the stars that we have now, Gen X stars that we have now, came out of a teenager flick, came out of a movie specifically made for teenagers. And I just don't feel like we have that now. Unless it's some sort of big sci-fi thing like Divergent or even Ender's Game to some extent, although, that wasn't that good of a movie. You just don't see a whole lot of it. You'll get maybe Booksmart every so often. And even that did like 18 million at the box office. It did barely nothing. And so it's weird because some of the teenage stuff that they want to do, the ideas in the past couple of years have been so horrendous that it's just like, why did you even try to do this? It was just such a bad idea to begin with. Warner Brothers in particular, and I'm just so tired of going in on Warner Brothers because I really do love the company and I would really love to work for Warner Brothers and have an HBO show. And I think I have an idea that is worthy of being an HBO show like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. But they decided, we want to do to try to cater to teens, we're going to reboot Gossip Girl. What? Why? Years prior, CBS, they were like, Paramount was like, oh, we want to get the teenage demographic, so we're going to reboot Beverly Hills 90210. It's like, what? Why are you rebooting stuff from the 90s or from the early 2000s when just make something original that caters to them now and caters to the struggles now, instead of trying to use this name? Yes, the name is good. It's already out there, et cetera, et cetera. But teenagers specifically need to feel in some ways like they are discovering something for themselves. The fact that you want to try to reboot something that was good for teenagers before and have it be good for teenagers now, it rarely seems to work. Now, again, Mean Girls is the one big shining light in Hollywood. I think Mean Girls made $100 million at the box office in January. So, it was like they had no real hopes for this movie. And yet somehow it was actually I didn't see the movie, but it was actually a fairly decent box office that they came up with. So I am a little shocked by that because, I think it did have quite a bit of nostalgia to it, but I think also that there were plenty of teenagers who went to see the movie. From what I've seen and what I've read online, there were plenty of teenagers who actually did go and see the movie and they liked the movie. So that's a shining light. But all the other stuff, it's just like, yeah, Hollywood, where are you in telling teenager stories? They no wonder some people are saying that, these younger generations, both Gen Zers and Gen Alphas, even though there are no teenage Gen Alphas yet, they're all Gen Zers still. Alpha isn't old enough. No wonder some of them are saying, yeah, we feel like we have to grow up so fast. It's not because they actually have to grow up fast. No, I already covered that in one of the Psycho videos, in Psycho Gen Z video. It's mainly because nothing is made for them anymore. Nothing caters to them almost at all. The few things that do are very few and very far between. You had the Goldbergs, which was a family thing that sort of catered to them. Yes, again, it still had the whole nostalgia thing of, let's remember the 80s and how great that was. And, I just don't understand it. Even with Hollywood has come out recently with some of the worst ideas to try to cater to the teenage demographic, that it's almost it's past the limitations of comical and going just back to straight up sad. I remember, and this was years ago, mind you, but I remember the CW, they had on the CW the show The Carrie Diaries. It was just such a misplaced. I just don't know how this thing got greenlit at all. It just made no sense. for those of you who don't know, the Carrie Diaries was supposed to be following a teenage Carrie Bradshaw, who is the main character on HBO's hit sitcom, which really put the network on the map, that of Sex in the City. It was supposed to follow a teenage version of her. And I'm just like, what? Because it just, none of it made any kind of sense on why they would think that that was a good idea. Because, like, wait a minute, you're trying to sell this show off of name recognition, but the name recognition refers back to something that is clearly, without a doubt, for adults and adults only. But yet you're trying to sell this as a teenage drama. It just didn't make any sense. So now you come back again to Disney/Marvel, trying to skew their next phases of the MCU younger. And I'm like, this is one of the best business decisions that has potentially been made in Hollywood in about a decade. Don't get me wrong, HBO, Warner Brothers Discovery, well, before it was Discovery, Warner Brothers, they tried the same or at least a similar thing. They were like, okay, we have this HBO Max streaming service. We should try to get the younger demographic and try to get them hooked to HBO. And they failed miserably. They had one show called Generation Plus, maybe, or Generation Y, or something to that effect. It starred the young black dude from Detective Pikachu, the Pokemon movie. It starred him, and I never actually watched the show, so I don't know. But it lasted for one season. They were like, yeah, this isn't working. Teenagers don't want to see that. They had like a slew of teenage stuff that was geared specifically to teenagers, and none of it really stuck around. They had We Are Who We Are. That also didn't pan out. It was a little bit better, but it also didn't pan out. And they still had the show Which Shall Not Be Named. And I'm like, y'all should have been canceled this show. It's a money suck. It's not getting the ratings that other stuff on the channel is getting. I don't know why you still have it. But, here we are. They finally hit on something when they got The Last of Us, which I think it's going to transition in the second season, since the second season is supposed to follow the second game a little bit more. It's going to follow the main character of I can't even remember her name, but it follows the main female character, the same girl, Bella Ramsey, off of Game of Thrones. So maybe that'll be a lot more teenage. It's also based off of a video game. We know video games are dominated by teenagers, so maybe that'll be a good thing. But Disney, going back to Disney, they're making a fantastic pivot. And I feel like, yes, there are older fans of the comic books and everything, and you guys still want to be catered to. But you have to remember, just like you, because some of you guys are actually parents, just like you all had to figure out when your kids were growing up how to get them into things like Star Wars, or into things like the comic books that you loved and all that stuff, the comic book characters and stuff, like how to pass on your nerdiness or your love for something to your children. The companies also have to figure that out. And the fact that the demographic that they have right now, that Hollywood has right now, is slowly but surely aging out. They can't seem to figure out how to capture Gen Z in any sort of significant way yet. And Gen Z, it's not like yes, most the majority of the generation is still teenagers, but it's not like they don't have a huge cropping of 20-something-year-old Gen Zers right now who are looking around and they're not seeing anything that caters to them either. So they're having almost a decade in which they would have maybe one movie per year or one or two TV shows per year that would come out and actually cater to them. Hollywood on the whole needs to start figuring this out, and very soon, or else they're going to lose an entire generation, and then nothing is going to really be getting made because they're not going to have a reliable cash flow. They're not going to have a reliable customer on which they could depend to keep them bolstered. So I think that Disney going a little bit younger, Disney saying to Marvel, like, listen, it would be great if we can have a younger Avengers. I think that's good. I think it's good if they can start to. I watched Miss Marvel, and I know some of you. There's a lot of controversy about Miss Marvel, and whether y'all liked it or not. I actually thought that it was great. It reminded me of TV shows that were made for teenagers in the late 90s and early 90s and stuff like that. It actually reminded me of like a more elevated Disney Channel show. But again, it was more elevated than Disney Channel, so it wasn't like, oh yeah, this belongs on Disney Channel. No, it was better than that kind of stuff. It almost sort of reminded me of like a Boy Meets World, not Girl Meets World, Boy Meets World, and stuff like that. If they can do that and they can once again garner a teenage audience, then that's better not only for them, but it's also good for comic book fans in general, because it allows them the money, the cash flow to keep going and producing things that we might want to see. The fact that, look, some of these people are going to grow into their characters and they're going to be really interesting as they go along. That might be a really good thing. It could be a very good thing. Again, Florence Pugh is, by the time Thunderbolts comes out, she's going to be like almost 30. I think she's what, 26, 27 now. Maybe she's a little bit younger than that. But again, it's going to be a good thing. Is all I'm saying. And I think that Disney doing it was great. It's going to be great for them. It's going to be great for us as a fandom going forward. So yes, you may complain about it right now, but trust me, this is something that is going to be good for everyone. It's going to be good for everyone going forward. I think that it will be. And hopefully Hollywood can figure this thing out in general, figure out how to cater to Gen Z in general, and start showing and really telling the kinds of stories that they want to see on screen. Because the sooner that they figure out how to do that, the better Hollywood in general will be. The better off it'll be. So I'm trying to think if it was anything else that I wanted to really cover. I feel like I was going to mention Spider-Man, but I feel like I covered most of what I feel about Spider-Man in my Spider-Man video. I feel like they've kept him as a teenager almost too long. He's been a teenager for pretty much all of the films, and Tom Holland is going to be near 30 by the time the next one comes out. So I'm like, yeah, they probably should age him up at some point, right? But yeah, there just hasn't been a whole lot of good stuff made specifically for teenagers. It's all been made either for adults or for the whole family, meaning that it's really made for like, younger kids, tweens, and younger. Oh yeah, I'll add this. The thing that I think that they should do is not that they should not go younger, but that they should divvy the youth up. So I think that they still should have the movies mostly dominated by adults playing adult roles, and then have the TV shows on Disney Plus. See, I don't think that they should. I don't think that they need to cut back on the shows that they put out on Disney Plus. I just think that they need to focus them and have all of the youth on Disney Plus, and then the adults playing adults in the films. So yeah, I think that's where we will end it. I don't have a sign. Hey everybody. So while I don't have an official sign off yet, I guess I should do the whole please like, comment, share, and if you so desire and you want to see more, subscribe. But more importantly, I will ask that you please go and purchase one of my books. They are mostly ebooks, and pretty much they are all under $10. See if any of my work is actually any good, if it lives up to any of the things that I'm talking about here on my channel, specifically with the entertainment industry videos. So please go purchase my books. All of my links are down below. Thank you.